Hi there, and welcome to the Projects Distilled YouTube channel where we talk about all things project management. I am glad that you're here. In today's video, we are talking about the free artificial intelligence engines that are out there and available for you to use right now, today, without having to spend a dime. That's ChatGPT, that's Bing with GPT enablement in it, and that's Google Bard. We've looked at each of these engines in past videos, but these things move quickly. We haven't looked at Bard since it's upgraded to its latest platform and is really matured a lot. We're going to see how ChatGPT, which is kind of the original, is still faring even against Bing, which has the later engine in it. We're going to throw several things that you would do in the course of your day as a project manager at these engines and see how they do. I'm going to give kind of my opinion on the scoring on how each of these do. Let's go ahead and dive in. I fed it basic context as I did for all three engines that we looked at. Came back with a great list of 15 items to consider in addition to the list of the tasks that I said we were working on. The question was, what other scope and tasks do I need to consider? So great job there. I asked it to combine them. So it put it into a table. It put it into two columns. I would have preferred one, but it did that. Then I asked it to sequence the task and create a table for the project, including a start date of July 1st. And look at the duration. So it came back and it did that for me. Now it didn't do all of the combined list. So that was a shortcoming on ChatGPT's part, but not bad. I asked it for critical path, came up with a list of 10 items that are on critical path. I have not validated. I don't think that those are the critical path items that I would have come up with, but it's a starting place if you're in a hurry. Then I asked it to do a project budget for each task and create a column, additional column for it. So here's the task, the duration, start date, end date, and estimated budget. Very, very unsophisticated budget. If you look at it, they roughly correspond to about $1,000 per day. I think it was using kind of that as a guideline, but at least it gives you a starting point. I asked it to do a project kickoff agenda, did a 12-point project kickoff agenda, and I also asked it to create the proposal for the slides, and so it has a list of 15 slides with some bullet points that should be addressed in each. So again, those two items play to the strong point of these AI engines. They did a good job. So next I asked it to create a project risk register for the project, and that's all I gave it, and it came up with a risk ID, risk description, impact, likelihood, severity, risk response strategy, all on its own. Insufficient user training and adoption. Yeah, that's a super high risk for actual adoption. Data migration issues, yes. Integration challenges with existing systems, yes. Inadequate communication, stakeholder engagement. So good, solid risks, came up with 8 of them. Good job on that. Please create a training program for users to transition from Microsoft to Google. Here's an outline. So it gave us 10 different things to consider with 3 bullets each. So a good starting place for that. All right, and here is Microsoft Bing and its responses. So I gave it the exact same context, word for word, as the other ones. Seems like a good start. Here's some additional things: change management plan, training plan, data migration. So came up with some reasonable items, came up with 6 of them versus the 15 that ChatGPT came up with. Combined them in the list and put them into a table. So it actually did that. So it added its to mine and it created a duration. What I really wanted to have was start dates in there. So I had it reformat with the dates. Interestingly, the overall duration of the project with a July 1 start took it all the way out past July of the next year. So that's a really long project. For a huge company, that makes sense. For most other organizations, that seems like a lot. Identify the critical path, came up with this really wonky way of looking things. I asked it to reformat, so it did. Again, I'm not sure that all of these are the actual critical path items, but there you go. Please estimate a project budget for each. It actually said, nope, not going to do that, but it gave us a way to think about it, which is if you think that the cost per day for a task is $100, then a week's worth would be $500. That's effectively what I think ChatGPT did, as well as Google Bard did, but here it's just saying, no, I'm not going to do that, but here's an idea for you if you want to do it. Please draft a project kickoff agenda. Came up with 10 items, no bullet points, no further descriptions. Please draft a project kickoff slide, 9 slides. Not a lot of detail on those. Please create a table of project risk register. It just defines how to create a risk table. So then I just asked it to, what are the big risks? It came up with 5, and they're pretty generic. So not very happy with Bing. I thought that this was a lame answer. I thought that this was a lame response on what the actual project risks are. Please create a training program, 5 items. So overall, Bing has the better intelligence engine underneath it, but just disappointing. All right, now we have Google Bard. The exact same word for word start. Came up with a good list of some additional items. It was only 5 of them, but data migration, change management, very similar to what the other ones came up with. I wish it was a little bit more robust in its response, but it was reasonable. Asked it to sequence the tasks, add their suggested tasks, and add durations with a start date of July. So it came up with this, did an okay job, didn't include all of them, and didn't really meld them quite the way I was hoping. For example, project kickoff meeting July 4th. That's after we've developed all the training and the guides and communication plans. I think that should have come earlier, and it has a total duration of 35 days. If you're migrating 3 people, maybe you could hit that. If you're migrating an entire organization, not a chance. Very naive. Ask it for a critical path, came up with this, which, like the others, I'm not sure that it's terribly accurate, but at least it understands what critical path is. I would validate any response you get from any of these engines. Given the task above, please estimate project budget for a week. Look at that. Came up with a estimated project budget of $35,000. Wait a second. How many days is the project? It's 35 days. So it just used $1,000 a day. Not an accurate budget, but it gives you a starting place. Please draft a project kickoff agenda. What was nice is it actually used the date, and that ties to the date that it gives up in here. Project kickoff July 14th. So that was, not a bad thing. And then it tells you who should attend, what the overall agenda should be, what should go into each of those areas, suggestions for opening the floor to questions, things like that. So not the most robust agenda, but a good overall look at how to run a kickoff meeting. And asked it for a project kickoff slide deck, came up with 7 slides with multiple bullets under each. Not as robust as ChatGPT, much better than Bing. Then we asked it project risk register, came up with 5 risks. I like the formatting on this, and I like that it had an owner for each who should own those risks. These are a little bit generic: missed deadlines, overspending, security breaches, so not a robust list of risks, but it's getting there. Much better than the first time we tried it with Google Bard. And create a user transition plan from Microsoft to Google. Has the goals, has the topics, so it goes by the functions of the tool. Training methods, suggests a schedule, suggests materials that should be created, how it suggests evaluations and training, gives training resources. So, there are Google Workspace documentations, training videos, and help centers out there, so that's good. It gives you a start. This was not as deep as ChatGPT on the actual content to be covered, but it gave a broader, more holistic look at the way that the training should be done, which I think is good. So it actually did a good job on that. So I have all 3 chat windows up. We have ChatGPT, we have Bing, and we have Bard. I've got them side by side, so we're going to take a look. How did they do with their initial identification of scope? So here you can see that ChatGPT gave us 15 different pieces of scope to consider integrating that I hadn't considered prior. Bing gave us 6 with almost no context around them. And Bard barfed a couple of times before it gave us anything. So, but then it came back with data migration, user training, change management, testing, and support. So those are fine. At least it gave it some context. Winner here is ChatGPT. Most thorough, most explanation around it. The loser, I think it's got to be Bard, because it didn't give me anything for the first couple of tries, but I'm actually most disappointed in Microsoft Bing's actual results. Once Bard kicked in, it did a little better job. So hard to say who the loser is there, but the winner clearly ChatGPT. So let's take a look at the next question. Create a table with original tasks and new tasks that you recommend. So here ChatGPT did that. I asked it to add the durations, so it came up with the durations. So ChatGPT, it created the table. I didn't ask it for the durations the first time. That was my mistake. But it came up with a table that had two separate columns, which kind of threw it off throughout because when I did ask it for the durations, it gave me durations, but it didn't include everything in the list, which was different. It kind of picked and chose. Bing, on the other hand, it gave us the durations, didn't give us the dates. I had to go back and specifically ask for the start and end dates to be included in there. And it also kind of did a strange sorting on it, but they're in there. Can't argue too much with them. Here, ChatGPT gave us a total duration from July 1st through the following March 16th. Here it is July 1st all the way through the following August 13th, so more than a year. And Bard gave us 35 days. So I'm going to, again, give it to ChatGPT. I think the duration, none of these had the size of the organization, so they're all flying blind. I think that Bard's was ridiculous. I think that it was the loser in the group. I think that ChatGPT was the winner. So the next challenge was identifying the critical path for the project. So all of them defined what critical path was. Each of them gave us a very different response to what the critical path was. I'm not sure any of these are correct. ChatGPT gave us 10 items that it said were critical path. With Bing, it just kind of barfed out this list. I had to re-ask it to put it into a table format. Total duration of 120 days. If I look at the total duration of this and total duration, when I quickly added this in my head, it's about 125, 130 days here to 120 days. So remarkably consistent, but they should be since it's the same underlying engine. Whereas critical path here, it had 17 days out of 35, so it said roughly half of it was under critical path. I would have to go through and really look at this myself. I don't feel like I can really declare a winner. I'm going to say all is a tie because they all actually gave me the information I was looking for. So now let's look at estimating project budgets. So I asked it to create a table. Here's ChatGPT. And it varied, it's using a rough heuristic of $1,000 a day, though not completely. So customization, 12,000 on 15 days, 8,000 on 10 days. So it had some kind of calculation, but roughly $1,000 a day. Bing said, can't do it. But it said that you should use some kind of a cost per day as a way to do it. And then here is Google's response. It didn't say how it did it, but it came up with a table of 35,000, which happens to correspond directly with a total duration of 35 days. So it used $1,000 a day to develop its budget. That's not how I budget. That's not how I recommend budgeting, but we gave it these engines so little information, at least it gave it a stab, and you can export each of these tables if you want and start to work on the budgets them individually as a starting place. Next, we asked each engine to draft a project kickoff agenda. ChatGPT gave us 12 agenda items to discuss, including change management approach, risk management, communication. If we look at Bing, it gave us 10, change, risk, communication, goals, objectives, etc. If we look at Bard, it was nice. It invented a conference room for us and told us who should be invited, and then gave us really just 6 items. And one of those is introductions and Q&A next step. So there's only really 3 meaty ones in here: overview, review of project charter, and discussion of risks and strategies. It did give us some additional information here, but overall I'm going to give it to ChatGPT, which was the most thorough, followed by Bing, followed by Bard. Next, we asked each one to draft a project kickoff slide deck. So ChatGPT gave us 15 slides with suggestions, bullet items under each. Bing gave us a suggestion for 9, and Bard gave us a suggestion for 7. Now, more is not always better. I'm not going to say that, but I like that it gave us a slide plus bulleted items. So did Bard. Bard just really didn't. It kept to the agenda and just says review a project charter, and that includes so many different elements in it. It didn't break those out. This one from Bing, it was fine, but I really think that ChatGPT gave us a more usable starting place. So ChatGPT wins again. So then we asked it to create a risk register for the project. ChatGPT gave us description, impact, likelihood, severity, and risk response strategy without ever being prompted. It identified 8 risks, which I think are all pretty valid risks. Bing, shockingly, said that it can't create a table. It's created them before, and it just mostly told us how to create a table. And then I just asked it, well, what are the risks? It came up with 5 with no additional type of context. So Bing was the big loser in this. Bard came up with 5. I love that it came up with the same probability impact mitigation, and it came up with an owner. So I really like that. But from a thoroughness standpoint, ChatGPT is the winner again. So the final task we gave it was to create a training program for users to transition from Microsoft to Google. ChatGPT gave us a nice outline, introduction to Google Workspace, email and calendaring, documents and collaboration. So it broke it down by each of the major functional areas within the tool: visuals and presentations, file management, QA and support. So that was a pretty fair job. Training from Bing, develop a comprehensive training plan that includes online tutorials, in-person training, etc. So this is more just kind of telling us what we should do, not helping us along that path of doing it. And then Bard said that these should be the topics, which is pretty in line with this. Gave us suggestions for training methods, which this gave us. Training schedule, suggested that it should be done over a period of 2 weeks. And training materials that you should create, ways to evaluate. So ChatGPT, I think, gave us the better kind of breakout of the actual training content. I think Bard actually did a really nice job of kind of looking at the overall program of how we should be doing the training. So I'm going to give this one to Bard as the winner. Bing just is an absolute loser here. I'm very disappointed in Bing. Okay, so you can see from the results that the clear winner is still ChatGPT. This one's been around the longest. It has some shortcomings because it doesn't have all of the data available to it that some of these other engines have, but it gives the best responses overall. Bard has come a really long way. I would say that it is this next best choice after ChatGPT to use. It actually did win in one of our categories, but it still is not quite as thorough and as robust. And I was disappointed to see that when I asked it my very first question, it just didn't know what to do. It said that it couldn't do it, which was not true because it then went along and did things pretty well. Bing, I continue to be disappointed in the Bing integration. It just gives weird answers. And when you compare them to ChatGPT, which has the older AI engine under it, it just still doesn't do as well. So Bing, gotta catch up, buddy. The other 2 tools are beating you. So right now, if you want to integrate artificial intelligence into your project practice, go for ChatGPT. That's my recommendation. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, add comments. Let me know if there's any content that you'd like to see. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.